All right, let's dive into BRICS. I bet a lot of you have heard about this group making headlines, but what's the real story? We've got your articles and some Wikipedia excerpts ready to unpack all the important stuff about BRICS.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. The global economy is a giant party, right? And for decades, the G7 countries, they've been like the VIPs, calling all the shots. But now, BRICS is crashing that party with a whole different vibe.
Totally. And it's not just about changing the music.
Oh,
BRICS is like seriously trying to shift the global power balance, like for real.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole thing. We'll start with how BRICS went from like an investment buzzword to a full-blown organization. Then we'll look at how they're expanding, going head-to-head with the US dollar, and even setting up their own systems.
Right.
But of course, we'll also dive into the criticisms because, like every party, there's always some drama, right?
Exactly. There are always some dissenting opinions.
So rewind to 2001. This Goldman Sachs economist comes up with this term, BRIC, to highlight investment opportunities in Brazil, Russia, India, and China. But get this, the guy who came up with the term, he's now calling BRICS a failed project.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Surprising, isn't it? He's saying it hasn't really lived up to its potential as a major global force.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about like how hard it is to bring together all these different countries.
Exactly. And get this, these countries, they didn't just sit around talking about it.
Right.
By 2009, boom, they're holding their first summit as a formal intergovernmental organization.
Ooh.
Talk about ambitious.
Yeah, that's a quick jump from an idea to an actual organization.
Yep.
It really shows how much they wanted to like shake up the global order.
For sure. And the guest list at this party keeps growing.
Oh, yeah.
So in 2010, South Africa joined, bringing us to the 5 countries we usually think of when we hear BRICS. But just recently, they added Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates.
Wow, so it's a lot bigger now. You know, you often hear the term BRICS Plus to like acknowledge this expanded group, even though it's not, an official name.
Oh, okay.
But what's really interesting is that they've brought in countries from Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia.
Yeah, that definitely makes BRICS less Western-centric compared to, say, the G7.
Totally. And it makes you think, like, what's the glue holding this diverse group together? And how will all these new members affect their ability to, like, act as a unified force?
That's a good point. But one thing that's been making a lot of noise is their goal of challenging the U.S. dollar's dominance.
Oh, right, yeah.
They want to, depend less on the dollar for international trade. Like, imagine buying, I don't know, Brazilian coffee with rupees, or filling your car in China with Russian oil paid for in yuan.
Yeah, that would be interesting. They're encouraging using local currencies for bilateral trade.
Right.
But they're also exploring the idea of a common currency.
Uh-huh.
Although, experts are kind of debating whether that's even realistic.
Yeah, the BBC even reported on some analysts who are skeptical about all of this. They're like, look, these countries are still super connected to the U.S. dollar. It seems like some guests at this BRICS party aren't ready to ditch the old playlist just yet.
Yeah.
But here's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
BRICS isn't just talking about change. They're setting up their own systems, like take the New Development Bank, for example, or NDB.
Right, the NDB. It's presenting itself as an alternative to the World Bank and the IMF.
Yeah.
They're focusing on funding big projects in developing countries, like infrastructure and development stuff.
We're talking about huge projects with a real impact, like the Tembisa Hospital in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
The NDB funded that. It drastically increased access to healthcare for a ton of people.
That's amazing.
And they've got serious lending power, up to $34 billion every year. Plus, their headquarters, Shanghai. That sends a clear message, like, hey, we're offering financing options that are outside the traditional Western-dominated institutions.
Absolutely. It all ties into this idea of creating a more multipolar world.
Yeah.
Where financial power isn't just concentrated in the West.
Exactly. And they're not stopping there. There's also the BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement, or CRA, which they created in 2015.
Okay.
It's like a safety net for members if they face economic turmoil, kind of like a rainy day fund for the group.
Right.
It's another alternative to the IMF, allowing BRICS nations to stabilize their economies during tough times without having to rely on those traditional Western-backed institutions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're even exploring a BRICS bridge payment system. It aims to enable transactions using those central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs.
Oh, wow.
It's all about creating a system where transactions can happen directly between BRICS nations, potentially cutting out the US dollar entirely.
That's ambitious.
Yeah.
So we've seen how BRICS is expanding, challenging the dollar, and even building their own alternative systems. It's quite a party they're throwing, with a lot of interesting ideas brewing.
Yeah, it is. But, every party has its share of drama, right?
Totally. I mean, despite all the ambition and potential, BRICS does face some criticisms and challenges. Like, one big question mark is, how unified are they really?
Right.
We're talking about countries with super different political systems, economies, and they even have some simmering territorial disputes.
Yeah, it's like trying to get everyone at a party to agree on the music. You're bound to have some disagreements.
Exactly.
Take India and China, for example. Those border tensions are a real challenge for BRICS unity.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Getting countries with such different interests and histories to work together, it's never easy.
So it does seem like there's some potential for, drama at this BRICS party, especially when you think about all the different guests and, their different, sometimes clashing interests. But even with those internal challenges, BRICS is still trying to make a big statement on the world stage, right?
Oh, absolutely. We talked about how they're setting up their own institutions, like their own financial systems.
Yeah.
But it goes way beyond that. They're literally trying to, reshape the whole structure of global power.
So instead of having just one superpower calling all the shots,
Right.
They see a world with multiple power centers, each with its own strengths and perspectives.
Exactly. It's called multipolarity. And BRICS is all about a system where power is more evenly distributed. Think of it like, instead of one captain steering the ship,
Right.
it's more like a team effort on a global scale.
I like that analogy. And it's not just limited to countries, is it? BRICS sees a role for international organizations, regional groups, even non-state actors, like everyone having a say in global governance.
Yeah, that's a key part of their vision. They believe that to solve these big global challenges, everyone needs to have a voice at the table, a chance to contribute.
That makes sense. I mean, this kind of shift in power dynamics, it would have huge implications for, everything. From global trade to security, diplomacy, the whole shebang. It'd be a fundamental change in how the world works.
Totally. And you can already see this playing out in how BRICS is approaching global trade.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about their efforts to move away from the US dollar.
Right.
But it's way bigger than just currency.
Okay.
They're pushing for trade agreements that are actually fair to developing countries. And they're really promoting South-South cooperation, encouraging more trade between countries in the global South.
So, those local currency swaps we discussed, that's them putting their money where their mouth is, right?
Exactly. And the BRICS Bridge payment system, the one that would use those central bank digital currencies, that could streamline transactions between BRICS nations, potentially bypassing the current financial infrastructure.
Wow. So they're really trying to build a more diverse and inclusive global financial system, one where emerging economies have more control.
Exactly. They want a seat at the table when it comes to setting the rules of the game.
But BRICS isn't just focused on economics, are they? They're also, stepping up their game in security and defense.
Oh, for sure. Adding countries like Egypt, Iran, and the UAE, that's a clear signal that they're increasingly focused on regional security, especially in the Middle East and Africa.
It's interesting how they're using this combo of economic and strategic alliances to boost their influence.
Right. And don't forget about the BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement. By providing that financial safety net for its members, they're strengthening their collective bargaining power and reducing their dependence on Western institutions.
Plus, they're actively involved in UN peacekeeping operations, and they're advocating for reforms to the UN Security Council.
It's all evidence that BRICS is moving beyond just talk. They're taking real, concrete steps to assert themselves as a major player in global security.
That's impressive, but as with anything BRICS-related, there are always skeptics, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Some critics say their goals are, way too ambitious, and with all those internal divisions, they don't think BRICS can really make a difference. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, it's true that BRICS is a relatively young organization. I mean, it remains to be seen if they can actually put their vision into action.
Right.
The jury's still out on whether those alternative institutions, like the NDB, are really effective. And their efforts to move away from the dollar, they face some serious obstacles.
And let's be honest, those ongoing tensions between India and China, those definitely don't make things any easier.
For sure. It's hard to present a united front when two of your main members are, like, constantly butting heads.
Exactly. And even though BRICS is pushing for this idea of a multipolar world, some experts are worried that their rise could actually lead to more polarization.
Oh, how so?
Well, they're concerned that we'll end up with a world divided between a Western bloc and a BRICS-led bloc.
Oh, I see.
And that kind of division, it could increase global tensions, maybe even lead to conflict.
That's a scary thought. So, with all of this in mind, why should we even care about this group of countries trying to shake things up? Like, what does it mean for us, the average person? Well, whether BRICS succeeds or stumbles, their impact on the world is going to be huge. I mean, we're already in this period of rapid transformation.
Right.
And BRICS is both driving and reflecting those changes.
It's like watching a giant puzzle being put together, with BRICS adding new pieces and rearranging the old ones. The final picture is still unclear, but it's definitely going to look different.
Totally. And the outcome of all this reshuffling, it's going to affect everyone. Everything from, prices we pay for things to global security threats, the whole balance of power. It's all up in the air.
So it's really important to understand what BRICS is trying to do, the challenges they face, and what their actions could mean for the future. This isn't just about some faraway countries. It's about understanding the future of our interconnected world.
Now, in part 3, we'll take a look at how BRICS is tackling some of the biggest global challenges we face, like climate change and pandemics.
Okay, so we've seen how BRICS is kind of trying to shake things up on the global stage. But now let's talk about those big challenges, the ones everyone's worried about.
Right.
Climate change, poverty, those pandemics that seem to pop up, and how to make development actually sustainable. So what's BRICS doing about all of that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Right. But it's important to remember that BRICS, well, it's not like one big brain with a single plan.
Right.
Each of those countries has their own ideas and priorities.
So it's more like our BRICS party, each guest with their own take on making the world better.
Exactly. But what's cool is that even with all those differences, they do agree on one thing.
What's that?
Global problem solving needs to be way more fair and inclusive. They're saying the current system, it ignores developing countries.
Makes sense. So everyone gets a seat at the table, especially those who've been left out before.
Yeah. And you really see this in their approach to climate change.
Okay.
They want a system that recognizes that developed and developing countries, well, they have different responsibilities and different abilities.
It's because the countries that caused most of the problem,
Right.
they should do more to fix it, both cutting emissions and providing financial help. It's about acknowledging that history matters, right?
Exactly. And this puts them kind of at odds with some Western nations who want everyone doing the same thing.
But BRICS argues that developing countries, they need to grow their economies, make life better for people,
Yeah.
but also transition to being more sustainable. Tricky balance, huh?
For sure. And while some BRICS members still rely a lot on fossil fuels, which is boring, don't forget, they're also putting serious money into renewables and green tech.
It's like they're saying, hey, we need to fix what we broke, but we also need to build a better future.
Precisely. And don't forget, global health, especially after COVID-19. I mean, that really showed us how fragile our world is and how much we need to work together.
Yeah, for sure.
BRICS really stepped up during the pandemic, providing medical supplies, sharing what they knew, and they were big advocates for making sure vaccines and treatments were available to everyone.
They also pushed for a stronger World Health Organization and a total revamp of how global health is handled. So we're ready for the next pandemic.
Right. That showed how much influence they're gaining in global health.
And it's not just reacting to crises, right? They're trying to solve bigger ongoing problems like diseases caused by poverty and lack of healthcare in developing countries.
The new development bank is putting money into improving healthcare systems, training healthcare workers, and making medicine more affordable. It's a really broad approach.
So BRICS is doing good things, but let's be real.
Yeah.
They're not a magic solution. They have their own issues to deal with.
Oh, definitely. Some members get criticized a lot for their human rights records.
Yeah.
And some say they don't do enough about corruption and bad governance.
Plus, there are worries that some BRICS projects, like the Belt and Road Initiative, they might prioritize economic development over the environment or social responsibility.
Those are valid points. We got to hold BRICS accountable. It's not enough to talk the talk.
Right.
They need to actually show progress and be willing to tackle those tough issues. So, as we wrap up our BRICS deep dive, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be pondering?
I'm curious, too.
I think the main point is this. BRICS is a major player now. You might like them, you might not, but you can't ignore them. They're shaking up the world order, pushing for multipolarity, and suggesting whole new ways of doing things globally. Whether they hit all their goals or stumble along the way, they're going to leave a mark. This deep dive has given you a good foundation for understanding BRICS, but this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and stay engaged with this ever-changing world.
I love it. What a journey this has been. We explored how BRICS came to be, their dreams for the future, the hurdles they face, and the potential impact on all of us. It's been a whirlwind of information. We hope you'll keep digging into the world of BRICS because it's a fascinating story and it's still unfolding. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into BRICS.